Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good.
Lose up to 5 pounds every week naturally. This is the easiest and most natural way to lose weight without going to the gym. First, you want to start intermittent fasting.
What's up? I'm Julio Lopez. I've got my master's degree. Let's look at 3 things you need to consider before taking this influencer's advice on intermittent fasting. First off, you gotta know, what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is an eating pattern where a prolonged period of fasting occurs. A person has a time window where they can eat, then he must eat outside of that time window. The theory is that with a limited amount of time that a person is able to eat, the overall caloric consumption at the conclusion of the day or week is reduced, thereby leading to a caloric deficit and ultimately weight loss. There's different variations of intermittent fasting. There's intra-weekly intermittent fasting with 2 subtypes that are very popular. One is alternate day fasting. So this is basically what it's saying. One day you're fasting, the other day you're eating freely, and alternating those days. There's also twice weekly fasting. This is where you're able to eat freely for 2 to 3 days, and then you fast for 1 day. And again, 2 to 3 days, fasting 1 day. The more popular variations of intermittent fasting are the intradaily variations. So in the intradaily variation of intermittent fasting, there's a time window where a person can eat during the day, and the rest of the day they must fast. So the most popular variation is where you've got 8 hours where you can eat, and then for the remaining 16 hours of the day, you can't eat because you're fasting. There's also time-restricted intermittent fasting variations where your 8 hours or whatever amount of time that you're allowed to eat is either early in the morning or later in the evening. The one that's early in the morning can be problematic for some people, especially if they want to maintain social relationships. A lot of people like to go out for dinner, and if you're fasting in the evening and you can't eat, then you're probably going to be sitting awkwardly as your friends are eating their dinner. The question that you're probably asking is, does intermittent fasting help with weight loss? There's a lot of research that indicates that intermittent fasting is an effective way to limit caloric consumption and possibly lead towards weight loss. Because there's less time available for a person to eat, meaning there's less time for that person to snack. Trying to overeat to circumvent hunger pains may cause gastrointestinal discomfort, and that would make overeating a really unattractive choice for people that are in intermittent fasting. But biggest thing that you need to consider is that not all the weight that's being lost during intermittent fasting is coming from fat. Let me get into that right now. Here's what's wrong with her advice. First, the sustainability of intermittent fasting. The research isn't all there yet. There's not a whole lot of long-term research on intermittent fasting. There's a possibility that it can help someone for the long term, and there's also the possibility that it might not work for the long term. Some of the things that we do know about intermittent fasting is that some of the weight loss is coming from lost muscle. This is problematic because retaining muscle after weight loss makes it easier to make the weight loss last longer. Muscle needs to be fed throughout the day with protein. And intermittent fasting, because of its prolonged fasting period throughout the day, there's not enough time for muscle protein synthesis to occur because a person is restricted to only so much time where they're allowed to eat. The extended fasting period makes it hard for the human body to maintain muscle mass, even if you're on a really high protein diet. The biggest weakness of what she's promoting is weight loss without exercise. Again, maintaining muscle is what you want to go for when you're trying to lose weight, because that's what's going to make it easier to keep that weight off, because it's muscle that's burning off more calories. If you're building more muscle, you can burn off more calories a lot faster, a lot easier. Think of it as like a V8 engine versus an inline 4 engine. The V8 engine sucks up more gas than the inline 4, so you're going to have to refuel a lot more often with the bigger, more powerful engine. Think of the big, powerful engine as muscle mass. If the muscle mass is getting smaller and weaker, that's like the inline 4. So you want to try to make your body into like a sports car. So my final verdict on intermittent fasting, will it help you lose weight? The answer is very likely yes. But again, you got to consider that you're losing muscle mass during intermittent fasting because the muscle needs to be fed by protein continuously. There's something called the nitrogen balance, where protein provides that nitrogen to the body. Because you're fasting for an extended period of time throughout the day, that nitrogen balance goes from positive to balance, where it's in equilibrium, down to negative. When your nitrogen balance is negative, that's when your muscle mass starts to be lost.